Home with Health, we hear from Linda, the great-great-granddaughter of a lady named Harriet, who had many challenges with her health that many of us can relate to. Linda, what did you first find out about Harriet, and what can we learn from her story?
Harriet at 18, working as a servant, working for this miller. A servant could be a living-in servant, or it could be somebody that came in daily and worked. Most girls, young girls, went into service. They were either trained as dressmakers or went into service. Young girls, they were very, very vulnerable, very vulnerable. Invariably, you were regarded as your master's possession. An awful lot of young girls became pregnant and had all kinds of problems and then got dismissed because they were pregnant, even if it was the master of the boss or the boss's son that had put them into that situation. So I should imagine she probably worked very hard and was very vulnerable, as they all were. John was born 1878 in the workhouse, in Llanfachlin Workhouse. I'm almost certain that John wasn't David Hamer's child, that the others were. She married David Hamer in 1884, after David was born. But I personally believe that William, Harriet's second born child, was David Hamer's, because of coincidences about where she happened to be. His wife had just died following the birth of her ninth child. And John, Harriet's eldest child, was a matter of a couple of months old at that point. And I think that that's when Harriet first became associated with David Hamer. And I did wonder if it was maybe to wet nurse the baby Elizabeth. That was in 1878. And by May 1880, she's having William where David Hamer was living. If the baby was illegitimate, even if the father was involved, the name didn't go on. 99 times out of 100, it was left blank because the baby was baseborn. But he was a labourer. I think he specialised in stonemasonry. And he worked on the Talgarth Asylum in Wales. He did a bit of a runner, actually, because there was proceedings being taken out against him if he didn't pay. 1885, David Hamer was brought before the board to remove his family or face proceeding. That was the 5th of February 1885. Then 28th of January 1886, proceedings to be taken against David Hamer. And then between the 28th of January 1886 and the 7th of October, he didn't pay, pleading poverty. He had paid bits and pieces of money, but obviously not enough to keep them. 30th of June 1886, he paid 10 shillings. He actually asked for a pair of boots because he didn't have any boots. To be honest, I think he was in dire straits himself. 23rd of September 1886, he paid 16 shillings towards the upkeep. September, that was the last payment. Proceedings against her husband were pending, and she was insisting upon her discharge. She left the workhouse and the children. They said that she could take one or she had to take all of them. She may have taken herself out because she didn't want David to have proceedings brought against him. She got pregnant with Harriet when she was out. Then Jane was born at Berrington Union Workhouse. So she'd obviously been out again, and Jane said that her father was David. They were looking at instigating proceedings against him again, that he was pleading in poverty. Resolved that proceedings be taken against David Hamer for neglecting to maintain his family, and that was the 28th of February 1887. The 7th of October, he did disappear, and I did track him. I followed him then, and I found him. He died in Hereford Union Workhouse. There was a little baby girl that died. She was born at Llanfachlin as well, but she died when she was just a couple of months old. The informant of her birth was T. Aubrey Jones, who was the master of the workhouse at the time. She was born on the 22nd of February 1886. She died on the 15th of September 1886, and T. Aubrey Jones was the informant of her death as well. And it was marasmus. Marasmus was failure to thrive. Harriet may well have been in Bicton Asylum at that point. I did wonder whether it was postnatal, simply because when she had Elizabeth Ann, who was also born at Llanfachlin Workhouse in May 1882, Harriet was in the Guardian's Minutes book 14 months after the birth of her third child. She's discharged from Bicton Asylum. That's when I started to wonder if there was a bit of a pattern emerging. with her having babies and then becoming mentally unwell. The asylums, certainly from 1845, were more places to put people. Harriet obviously had these episodes and went in, and then she must have recovered sufficiently to come out again. But I'm not sure about how much therapy she would have had. They called them idiots and imbeciles. I mean, some of the terms are just horrible. You'd have people with mental health problems, and then you'd have people with learning disability as well. Deaf and dumb was another one. They like to use those expressions. You look at the censuses, particularly ones that are done in workhouses, you'll find that there'll be comments in the far right margin saying if somebody's an idiot or an imbecile. Harriet's last admission into Bicton Asylum was 10th of July 1904, but the actual record at Cardiff City said it was the 9th. That was her last admission, and she then was transferred to Cardiff City Mental Hospital on the 1st of April 1911. I've got the records from Cardiff City Mental Hospital, and she was actually recorded as having chronic mania. You know, that was a long time ago, and opinions now will probably be different, and treatment certainly would have been different. When she moved to Cardiff, it was a purpose-built hospital. I think they were much more in tune then with therapeutics rather than just warehousing them. I've actually got a picture of a dormitory at Cardiff City Mental Hospital, a female dormitory. There was just loads and loads of beds, and you literally had a bed and a chair by the side. In 1911, Jane, her youngest, was in Liverpool, where Elizabeth Ann had gone. William and John, at that point, were both in Wales, and David was in Swindon, but then he moved to the Rhondda. He actually committed suicide. When they found his body, there was a letter in his pocket that was from Cardiff City Mental Hospital telling them that his mother had died. Harriet specifically was known as a lunatic. She just kind of had to deal with everything. I think to get through to her at 60 was no mean feat, to be honest.